Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. That's all around simplifying your Windows 10 migration with Ivanti, and it's just for the NHS today. So we are joined by Joe Hirth, who is a systems engineer at Ivanti, who is going to be presenting the webinar today. And then we also have Ryan Hall here from Byte Software Services, who is our Ivanti specialist here. And then we also have Chris Swanee, who's going to be joining at the end. So if you do have any questions around Windows 10 licensing, he will be there to answer those for you. Okay, so I'm now going to pass you over to Ryan, who's going to discuss the relationship between Bytes and Ivanti, just before we pass over to Joe.
Good morning all, it's Ryan here from Byte Software Services. As Amy said, I'm the virtualization specialist for the public sector. So as I'm sure you're aware, Bytes are the chosen partner for NHS Digital on the management of the Windows 10 National Enterprise Agreement. So in order to meet the timescales within that, the NHS are helping with the migration projects. We know these can pose significant challenges to you around applications, profiles, policies, patching and security. Of course, these won't be one-offs with the Evergreen platform and the challenges that will arise every 12 to 18 months. Bytes are a long-standing partner of Ivanti, particularly around the Shavlik, Res and Absence portfolios. And Ivanti are going to talk to you about how their portfolio can solve some of these challenges. We have great relationships with Ivanti and with our in-house skills to help you with these tools, especially now that their portfolio has grown to include several other vendors, including Landesk, Heat and Software. It's a great time to work with Ivanti. So I'll pass you over to Joe Hirth at Ivanti to kick things off.
Okay, so as Ryan said, yeah, we've got a great partnership with Bytes, and hopefully we're looking to show you guys at the NHS some of the stuff that we can do together. And I'm going to present that today in the webinar. So as briefly said already, I'm Joe. I'm one of the systems engineers, and I cover the West EMEA area of the globe. So yeah, pretty much responsible for all of the kind of technical stuff up to the point of sale, really. So any questions and stuff, yeah, as has been said, please feel free to put them in the questions box at the end, and I'll do my best to answer them. Or if you want to chase this up after and have a more in-depth discussion, then that's also available as well. So going straight in, just wanted to give you a little bit of a background into our company, because a lot of people are still unaware of the Ivanti name. You might have heard it but not quite understand where it's come from. So this is a quick DNA slide on where we come from. So 1985 is when Landesk started and essentially ran its own course along that top line there, growing through acquisitions. I joined via Absence, which is sort of top right of the slide, in around 2016. And shortly after that, 2017 sort of time, we changed our owners and ended up merging with Heat, because the private equity firm that owned Heat bought us. So we merged together and all became friends, and basically are now a big company called Ivanti. So we're taking all the best of breed products from those previous companies and making a really good solution or solutions in the ITAM space, security, service management, supply chain, and UEM. Taking that a step further, this is how it breaks down into a technology perspective. So as I said there, we've got security, we've got endpoint management, asset management, service management, and identity. Now, arguably, there's a sixth tower, if you like, but it kind of it spans across all of the different areas of the business, and that is to do with our discovery, reporting, and sort of analytics side of things, where they can they're the glue that can gel all of these towers together and give you a solution rather than a kind of individual point product. However, for today, what we're going to do is, for this deal that we've come up with, Bytes and themselves, we're offering an ELA Pick 2 opportunity. So basically, it's a set price, and you can consume these two towers, if you like, of technology. There's a lot of security stuff that we do. So things like patching. We're a third-party patch leader now. We've got a product which is able to integrate into SDCM. So if you're an SDCM customer, we can basically provide you a plugin which does all the third-party patching that SDCM doesn't do. We can do privilege management, which is helping control those admin rights on the Windows desktop. We've got device and app control, just to name a few there. However, today is going to be mainly talking around that unified endpoint management, because we're talking about Windows 10 migrations, which fit quite nicely into that orange tower there. So topics that I want to cover for today, basically, are you looking to replace or re-image or upgrade the endpoint? Today we're going to focus on re-imaging, but it's a similar process, whether it's an upgrade or a new device. So how are your users going to react to an OS upgrade? And how are your users going to react to having to reconfigure all those applications, mail profiles, settings, and things after that migration? So that's the main topic for today. So challenges of a migration. Today's workspace is a hybrid of technology, and we're in a constant state of migration. Now, this was something published by Forrester. And basically, migrations aren't going to be as slow as they used to be. So, just to take an example here, XP lasted around 10 plus years. We still see it out there now. However, its main life is around 10 years. Windows 7 is going to be about 9 years. But however, Windows 10 is looking to be upgraded once every 6 months and then sort of end of life within 2 years. So a lot more aggressive for Microsoft, and obviously we need to put things in place there to make sure that we're ready for these quick fire upgrades, essentially. So Windows 10 Outlook, what does it look like? So Microsoft's are slamming on the door of people like PC World and stuff like that, these PC builders. And they had hoped that, the new Intel KB Lake or AMD Zen chips for Windows 7 or Windows 8 PCs might be offered. But actually, both chips are only supported by Windows 10, essentially, is what they've been told. Microsoft made them do it. The latest chips will only support Windows 10, says Mark Hackman of PC World. And remember that Windows 10 is intended to be a work in progress and upgraded continuously. So don't get settled on the version you've got, because it's likely to change, and Microsoft are forcing their hand there. So challenges of migration. So we've got 5 main technical steps in order to complete a migration. So basically, to get from Windows 7 to Windows 10, we need to somehow deploy an operating system, along with some drivers with that for different types of software, different types of hardware, sorry. And we need to get those applications that, chances are most of the ones which you had on Windows 7, you're going to want again on Windows 10. You might want to add some, you might want to take some away, but you need some kind of management of that. That's the device side, those first 3. And then you're kind of looking at the user side, which is the number 4 and 5. So you've got the user's files and folders, so all of their documents and stuff like that. And then finally, you've got their profile. Now, their profile is what sort of comprises of all the customizations which they've done over the last, arguably 10 years that they've had Windows 7 or even before that in Windows XP. Things like your dinosaur mouse, your cat background, your Outlook profile, your look and feel, basically. Now, I'd like to add a 6th step, which is arguably most important. We want to make this process reusable, because we're going to have to be doing this a lot more often. So, basic steps of migration. 5 basic steps for a successful migration. First things first, we need to centralize. So this is all about getting that user's persona and all their data into a central location and basically getting it off of that endpoint, because we want that endpoint to almost be transparent. And we want to be able to upgrade it without it basically having anything on there, which is going to be lost when you upgrade. Discovery. Finding out what devices are out there, because in order to manage them, you need to know what's there first. Assessment. Deciding what to do with those devices which you found in the discovery phase. So whether you want to manage them, do you want to manage them or not? And if you do want to manage them, do you want to migrate them? The danger steps, deployment. So if the previous 3 steps have been successful, IT will not be so nervous about deployment. However, it is the most dangerous one, and obviously if you haven't done step 1, 2, and 3 properly, you go and deploy something, you're going to have unhappy users, and essentially step number 5 is going to be a nightmare. This is again probably the most important one. You've got the user acceptance. We want a proper migration, and when I say proper, that means all of their files, folders, everything which the user was used to before, that's got to be there when they get their new operating system. So, going into these things in a little bit more depth here. So, centralization. Over time, users will customize their desktops and applications, as well as saving files and things in various locations. So, for example, changes to font. A user might change their font in order to be more customized or more efficient in their work. Something which everyone does likely is that they will customize their email signature, put their phone number on there, email address, website, pictures, etc. That's something which is personal to the user, and that is something which needs to be captured. Finally, you've got things like files and folders saved all over the desktop, like this desktop here in Windows 7. And what we've got to think about is how are all of these legacy settings and files and folders captured and centralized. Next up is the discovery stage. So a huge issue with migration is to know what devices you have on the network, let alone which ones are suitable for upgrading. Using Ivanti's endpoint manager, we're able to discover all of the devices on the network using our unique methods of ARP broadcasting. So you can see there in my list there, I've got all sorts of things. This is at home, Google Homes, I've got iPhones, BT Home Hubs, etc. It literally finds everything on the network. Anything which has an IP address is going to be found, and then you can decide whether you want to manage it. Number 3, assess. So we want to determine which devices is going to be suitable for upgrading, because you're not just going to want to send out Windows 10 to all of these devices all at once, because that's going to provide an absolute nightmare again. So, for example, what we can do here is we can run a query, and we can say that if this device has more than 4 gigabytes of RAM, so looking in the middle of that box on the left-hand side, Windows 7 installed, or over 2 gigabytes of free hard drive space in this particular example, then we want to upgrade it. Here, this query is going to be run against all of my devices, and it's going to return only the devices which are suitable for upgrading based on our criteria, like that. We can then target those machines with a drag and drop and basically push a Windows 10 image to them. Now, that same criteria can be displayed on a live dashboard for a view of devices. So I'm just going to get my pen here. So we can see things like, devices which are ready to be migrated, devices which are not suitable for being migrated, and devices which are already migrated, as well as things like, for example, the location of those devices, and things like when the warranty is expiring. So number 4, that deployment phase. So everything is templated in our solution here. It typically includes things like partitioning the disk, deploying an image, installing drivers, and joining the domain and installing software. What's nice about this is we're able to deploy a single Windows 10 image to multiple types of hardware. Using what we call hardware independent imaging, or HII, means that our software will detect which drivers to deploy to which manufacturer. So for example, you can send the same Windows 10 image to a HP Pavilion laptop, Lenovo Yoga, or Dell Workstation, and then our software is going to determine which drivers to put on there, so you don't need to manage all these different images for Windows 10 for every single different type of hardware you have. It's going to leave IT with less headache and a much faster migration. Again, deployment continued here. So deployment can be triggered in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be a push from IT. We can offer a self-service option. So, for example, this is what the user sees on their desktop. They can actually say that when I'm ready to deploy that Windows 10 image, I've got myself 40 minutes spare or whatever, however long it's going to take for you to install this, then they can go ahead and do that themselves. IT can send that image right now if they want. Or you can do an automatic upgrade based on a schedule. It's worth noting that a combination of all the above can be used together. So, for example, allowing the users to maybe self-upgrade for a period of time, let's say a month or something. And if they fail to do that, you can set a schedule for the end of the month and then forcefully re-image that device if that user hasn't actually taken the time to do it themselves. Coming up to that user acceptance piece. So we want to provide that user with a seamless experience from their Windows 7 or 8 desktop, which they've got at the moment, or XP, to their Windows 10. So it needs to be looking something like this. The desktop that they've been used to for the last 9 years or so in that Windows, but looking at it in a Windows 10 environment. So bearing in mind here that Windows 7 was released on the 22nd of October 2009, chances are these users are going to have, made a lot of customizations and lots of files and folders all over the place, and they're going to want that same experience to be there in their Windows 10 environment. So next up, I've got a short video, about 5 minutes long, and it's just going to basically show how this works end to end with a seamless migration. I'm going to narrate over the top of it. So here we go. So this is using our three products, which I've spoken about already. So Endpoint Manager, File Director, and Environment Manager. So a user now logs into their existing Windows 7 environment. And they have been using this for some time, and therefore will customize their desktop to be familiar to them. This user has some map drives, and some map printers. And within applications such as Outlook, they've configured their Mackie profile, their preview pane layout, and their signature to their own preferences. Business and third-party applications are also customized. So toolbars have been moved, various options selected and deselected, and in many cases, this is so the user can be more productive and have that improved user experience. Even Windows-based applications such as Notepad can be personalized, and in this case, the user decides to set their font to Windings 3, size 72. Now, these settings are usually kept in the Windows profile for that user, locally on the machine, along with their files and folders. And migrating these from one place to another can be a difficult challenge. Going from Windows 7 to 10 poses a lot of hurdles, and as you can see, each operating system has its own profile version, and these are not compatible between each other. Windows 10 even has a version 6 profile now after Anniversary Edition. So first things first, we need to capture those existing settings and profiles. Using Ivanti Endpoint Manager, agents are going to be deployed to that current Windows 7 estate. So in this example, we can see Environment Manager and File Director agents being deployed. Endpoint Manager that gives complete control of that endpoint and then reports back once it's completed its task. So next we see a user log into their Windows 7 environment, their old one again, for the first time after our agent's been installed. We can see that profile's been imported there, and it's going to be centralized now, no matter whether it's a roaming profile or a local profile. Using built-in reporting tools, IT can gain an insight into which part of the user's profile has been collected, how big each profile is, and whether there are any parts of the profile still left on the endpoint. So once that's complete, IT can have a statewide visibility of the machines that are ready to be migrated, as well as some other useful information, such as which machines are not suitable for migrating, and those that have already been migrated. This dashboard can be presented on a wallboard for a live status update of the migration. Now we see a user using the self-service portal. This is all customizable by IT, and they decide at a time convenient for them that they are going to upgrade themselves to Windows 10. That image is then downloaded to the endpoint, and the template is fired off. It boots into WinPE without any need for anyone standing at the computer. It then does some prerequisite tasks such as partitioning the drives, wiping the drives, setting the format. We can see here that image is now being deployed. And that Windows 10 machine is now ready to be logged into. The user uses the same credentials that they had in their previous Windows 7 environment. And it's important to note here that just the right amount of profile is synchronized down to the endpoint in order to give that user a quicker logon than before, and all policies are executed in parallel. Here we see the user's logon. All their files and folders are there as they were in Windows 7 with their desktop background. Outlook has been upgraded, however, we've managed to keep all the settings that we had before. So the preview pane layout is as it was. There's the signature and the MAPI profile as well. Foxit Reader, those preferences which you saw, show startup unticked, that's still unticked. And notepads were on Windings 3, size 72 on their Windows 10 environment. Finally, we've got some printers which we had mapped from previous. And that's the end of that video. I'd just like to say thank you. And if you'd like more information or more demonstration or a workshop for anything that you've seen today, please contact Ryan Hall at Bytes, and his details are going to be, I think, on the next slide.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to any questions. So if anyone has any questions at all, there is a questions box just to the right hand side of your screen. If you just type them in there, I'll read them out for the guys here to answer them for you. So just wait a minute or so if any come through. And then obviously the screen there, if you do want to submit any outside of the webinar today, Ryan's details are just on there. If you'd like to take those down and get in contact with him, he'll be more than happy to help. Okay, I'll just wait a few minutes to see if any questions come through. Okay, just one here from Alan, who said, will the slide deck be made available? Yes, it will, and also the recording as well. I'll send you all that this afternoon. Okay, Joe, we have a question here. What is the process for the self-service portal?
So it's a built-in option in Ivanti's Endpoint Manager. Essentially, when you deploy the agent, it just becomes an application, which is in the Start menu. There's no real extra configuration needed. It's an option which is built into the software, and basically you can just determine whether you want to allow the user to have that ability to use the self-service portal, or whether you want to retain the control and send that image or any applications to that user without them using the self-service portal.
Thank you, Joe. So we have another question here. It says, how much effort is required from an end user perspective?
So it should be seamless. This is where we try and template it as much as possible to make the job for IT easier. What we really need to do there is everything that you saw in the video was automated, and the user didn't really do anything outside of what they would usually do. So for example, their profile, we can retrospectively pick up those changes which a user has already made. So in that video you saw when we logged in for the first time after the agent was deployed, we pulled all of that information, all of that profile off of that user's endpoint without the user having to do anything. It's just a one-time import. Now, if you put the agent out there today, for example, you can start capturing all those changes which the user makes, as well as an import. and the user really has to do, well, they shouldn't have to do anything. It just captures stuff which IT determine what they want to be captured. So we list applications and we list Windows settings that we want to be retained. And then if the user changes any of those, it gets centralized, and that's it. The user doesn't have to go ahead and sort of change anything manually.
Brilliant, thanks, Joe. Some more questions coming through. So this one says, do you have to build collections of drivers for different hardware, or is this built into the software?
So this is built in. So we mainly have Lenovo, Dell, and HP. That's all categorized by default. You can add your own as well. So for example, like within 24 hours of a new piece of hardware coming out from one of those 3 vendors that I've just mentioned, the driver will be available in our software to be deployed. We find it unusual for people to get brand new kit on day one anyway, so that's never normally an issue. But you can build your own collections, but typically it will determine which ones are needed for the bit of software which the image has been sent to.
Great, thank you. One more question here. It says, what cost model is used for the tool? We currently use SCCM 2007 R2, so not able to deploy Windows 10 and therefore looking for alternatives, not necessarily SCCM. Okay, so yeah,
Ivanti Endpoint Manager is the equivalent product from us, effectively. I say equivalent, but we've got far more features as you've just seen in that video. Now the cost model, we've got, it depends if you're going for this deal, essentially. It's typically device-based because we're managing those devices. However, I don't know if there's any changes with the ELA opportunity, which we're currently running with Bytes. So it might be something which we take offline and we have a discussion, a commercial discussion on that, just to work out best pricing for you guys.
Thanks, Joe. One more question. We currently have Ivanti Management Console version 10.1.30.401. Do we need an extra license for Environment Manager?
Off the top of my head, I don't know which version that is exactly, but so there is 2 ways that you can get Environment Manager if you're already an Endpoint Manager customer. You can get Environment Manager as a bolt-on to your existing Endpoint Manager, or what was LDMS console, at an extra cost. It's not the full version, it is a cut down version, and it only provides what we call policy. If you want basically that rich experience, which I kind of demonstrated today, you'd be better off getting the standalone, what was basically AppSense's Environment Manager. It's now called Ivanti Environment Manager. And that will give you both components, which is personalization, which is effectively the profile part of the software, and then the policy side as well. So the pricing, though, is quite compelling on the Pick2 ELA, and probably find that actually we can do quite a good deal on the full-blown software rather than just the built-in one, because we want to offer you guys the best experience we can, obviously, for your users and stuff, and you probably want that as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Joe. So I think that's all the questions we have for today. So thank you everyone for submitting then, and as mentioned previously, if you do have any more, Ryan's details are on the screen just there, and as mentioned at the beginning as well, if you could complete the feedback form at the end, we'd really appreciate that. So how well you thought the webinar was, if you'd like any further information. We are offering some free of charge workshops, so if you'd be interested in one of those, just pop that in there and we will get back to you. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Joe, for presenting as well, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.